Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here in person. It's one of the first events, even outside of the country where I live. So I'm really pleased to be here. I'm going to talk you through AI in data at a higher level than we've seen in the great presentation before, but it's very complementary to what you've learned over there. Yeah? It's going to be about the opportunities, the journey, and the risks around AI and big data. Yeah? I will follow the order from opportunities, then the challenges and the risks, and finally, how can you have a safe journey in scaling all this technology into the real value creation. The opportunities. We all know this, yeah? This is a huge business opportunity around AI and big data. Pricewaterhouse came up with this number already a few years ago. It's about more productivity, it's about personalization, it's about saving time, and it's about quality. Yeah? All those things together create a huge value. And the main technology behind this is a subpart of artificial intelligence. It's called deep learning. Yeah? There are many other AI technologies, but what creates value today is especially that type of technology. There are many use cases that are used across different sectors. All we know, chatbots, optimization, and fraud detection, market opportunities, you name it, it's there. Everything that leaves a digital trail that creates data can be used to optimize. Yeah? And then in almost any sector, this technology is taking off. Yeah? Some sectors are more leading than others, and of course, technology sector, telco sector, finance sector started, but other sectors which are more traditional, like utilities, are also starting. This is a picture of 2019. I'm sure that through COVID, this has been drastically changed, but the trend is there. Yeah? Now, so this is high-level stuff, yeah? What's happening in the market. Let me give you a few examples of how we use this technology in Telefonica. Yeah? Telefonica is a large international telecommunications company, Europe and Latin America especially. And we use this in kind of 3 or 4 different ways. Yeah? The first one is internally. Yeah? As I said, everything that optimizes your data, that everything that you use in the business process and that generates data, you can optimize with this technology. Yeah? When you think about customer lifetime value, understanding better your customers, what customers are leaving, how do you price your products in a dynamic and an intelligent way. It's about smart marketing, understand what are the best ways to reach your customer. In our case, what kind of device will people like to have, and when are they planning to upgrade to a new device? You can all predict that with this technology. Yeah? You can also not only work in the consumer space, but also in the business space. Yeah? Recommendation is also very important. And finally, optimization of your processes. Now, a large telecommunications company invests billions a year in rolling out networks, fiber, 4G, now 5G. And if you use the technology to optimize that, you can have enormous amounts of uplift in sales or even cost savings. Yeah? So this is internal uses. Yeah? And there are about, 200, 300, 500 things where you can apply this. In every use case, you can save some money, you can win some millions. It builds up to a huge amount of money, and that's why this is so big. Yeah? So that's internally. Yeah? But there are also other examples. For instance, this is what we do to innovate with the customer in the customer relationship. Yeah? This is a digital assistant that we have building not for one specific use case, but we're building it in such a way that it can scale across any use cases. And here you see a few examples. The first one is in Spain, in the pay TV area, where customers can talk to the TV and ask for recommendations of certain movies, of certain actors.
Quiero ver Vengadores Infinity War en la televisión.
So you talk to your mobile and it puts it on the TV. Yeah? That's one use case over there. A use case that we had here with O2 in the UK is that you can ask about your bill, about your personal information. So this is not frequently asked questions. This is questions that goes directly to your personal information. Yeah? Is fetched in real time from the systems and then is brought back to the customer.
Why my bill is higher?
Let's have a look. Your latest bill was 50 pence higher than usual because of extra charges.
So you see, it can even deal with non-grammatical English. But it really helps because this is 24/7. Yeah, it's not just office hours; it's 24/7, and it really works. You can do. We have a specific device in the home where you can do video
Haz
conferencing.
una videollamada a Alejandro.
So you just talk to the device. You want to do a video conference with some person, and it brings it up, and you can move it to the TV as well. And finally, of course, this is a big
Haz
thing.
una videollamada a Alejandro.
That is about, we put the same technology in the call center. Yeah? So we did this in Brazil and in several other countries where the same assistant is handling about 30% of all the calls that come in. And of those 30%, about 70% is able to deal with on the first interaction. Yeah? So it's a huge saving. It allows people to call to our company anytime a day, any hour of the day, and that's very important for the customer experience. So internal usage, optimization, innovating in the customer relation, but the data in itself that has been created is also a business in itself. Yeah? So here you see an example of two applications that take data that's floating through our network. It is aggregated and anonymized in large groups, and then it is solving business problems. Yeah? On the left-hand side, you see Barcelona. It's mobility data of movements, the number of movements in a city to three different areas. Yeah? Important areas: hospital, university, and the harbor. Yeah? And what you see is there is about 7,000 movements from all kinds of places in the city to that specific place. Again, this is not individual people moving around. Yeah? This is groups of people, and it's about numbers between different locations. And this is very important information, for instance, for public transport planning. Yeah? So rather than having in a metro station doing a research to plan the metro for the coming 3 years, you have one person in every metro station, and you ask, where are you going, and is this for work or for leisure? Which cost about 3 or 5 million euros. If you do it with this technology, you have much finer, much preciser, much quicker, and much more economic information to do those kinds of plannings. Yeah? On the right-hand side, you see a tourism application. It's the same data that floats through the network, inclusion of roaming. For your information, we have about 800 million events in the mobile network of our national customer, and about 200 million events in our network of foreign customers. Of course, this is pre-COVID. Yeah? But this helps you to understand for a certain, this is a festival in Valencia where people come from all over Europe, and you can see how many tourists are coming. You can see it nationally from which areas they're coming, and you can also see how the groups of people, the tourists, move around within the city compared to a normal day. Yeah? That's what you see here, which is very helpful for organization of this event. Yeah? Now that's business applications, and I said there are more. There is a fourth area, and there is also a lot of social value of this data. Yeah? It's not only for optimizing businesses across different sectors, it's also to benefit society, yeah? What we call AI for good. Yeah? Just one example here, or a few examples. This one is the fight against COVID. As we all know, COVID is about propagation of the virus, which is through people coming together. So if you lock people down, they don't move, and the virus don't spread. So mobility data is very important in this respect. Yeah? What we showed you on the Barcelona, you can use that perfectly for the fight against COVID. What you see here, and this is based on a study on an initiative that is currently still going on, where 17 mobile network operators across Europe share on a daily basis anonymized and aggregated mobility data with the European Commission, so they can manage the crisis from a European perspective together with the European Center for Disease Control. Now, there are many use cases that you can do. Here you have, just going to explain two of them. On the left-hand side, you see France. Yeah? What you see is on the left picture is the intensity of movements between different regions of France. Yeah? So the darker the color, the more movements between regions is there. And on the right-hand side, you see from the statistics office the excessive number of deaths if you compare 2020 to 2019. And what you see there is a very high overlap between the colors, the intensity of the colors, which means that mobility data by itself is a very good predictor for the propagation of the virus and also for the fatality of this virus. So this information can be used because mobility patterns are very predictive. They are more or less the same at country or city level. So you can predict where the virus goes, and you can also check what happens if people have to stay at home and whether actually people or populations are staying at home. The other example that you see is a map of Spain. The black lines are the administrative borders of the provinces. And usually we all know the governments take decisions based on administrative borders. Yeah? So no movement between different provinces or between different regions or even cities or neighborhoods. Yeah? Administrative things, almost arbitrary boundaries. Yeah? What you see in colors is mobility clusters, groups of mobility that have a higher movement, a higher mobility within that region than outside that region. Yeah? So these are almost natural containers for economic activity because there's a very high relation between mobility of people and economic activity. Now, if governments were able to use those kind of mobility or economic-driven borders for confinement, then they would still have the same impact in reducing movements and mobility of populations, but they would have a less severe impact on the economic activity. Yeah? So that's something that came out of this initiative, but unfortunately it's very hard for governments to put such kinds of decisions into practice because people understand administrative borders, but they don't understand those kinds of borders. Yeah? But very much of this data can also be used to solve big problems. Yeah? Other example here you see climate change and air pollution. We did some work where we have mobility of pollution sensors on top of cars. We drove through the city and then we were able to build simple, like Google Maps that is for traffic, the same colors for no pollution, medium pollution, and high pollution. And then you can overlap that with where schools are placed or where houses for older people are or hospitals are, and really what kind of people are affected by the pollution in big cities. Yeah? It's a huge problem. 9 of 10 people in the world breathe polluted air, and there are more than 7 million deaths a year that are attributed only to air pollution. So business value, internal value, it creates new business, but it also helps society if you do it well. Now, this looks all great, yeah? So let's look at the challenges that are there, and what are the risks. Actually, very different risks, yeah? And I will try to give you an overview of what are those kinds of risks and how can you deal with that, yeah? Because we already spoke of this. We heard it in the previous talk about bias. That's just one of the risks that there is, yeah? First, the question is, you can ask yourself, is AI a blessing or a curse, yeah? We all know the driverless car, the autonomous car, great, yeah? It's great. It's not yet there, but there are many pilots already, and it really would save a lot of people's lives because the fatal accidents go down a huge amount of percentages. But that same technology of autonomous driving can also be used for lethal autonomous weapon systems. Yeah? So this is a Russian tank that is already able to drive by itself, yeah? And the technology is also there that that is able to shoot by itself. So it could recognize targets and it could autonomously shoot. Yeah? So you can ask, is this technology a blessing or a curse? Well, the answer is, of course, it's not about the technology. It's about how you use it. Yeah? But that's an important risk. Another example is this. So these are these great deep learning algorithms where you have two algorithms that train each other, yeah? That train themselves. One says, is this a good image of a cat? And the other says, no, it's not. And is this one? Yeah, so they do millions and millions of interactions and they come up with important things. So what you see is two people try to dance like Bruno Mars. Yeah? They cannot do it at all. But thanks to this technology, by taking the picture, taking the video of those people, they can actually dance online equally as as Bruno Mars. Yeah? This very powerful technology. Same technology. So this technology also brings dead actors to life. Yeah? They can make new movies with people who are actors who already died, passed away, and it looks real. Yeah? But that same technology can also be used for other things.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time. How about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things. At least not.
Of course, these are the
address,
famous deep fakes, yeah, that you all have heard of.
Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be
this
more.
This deep fake was made about 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah? It costed a few developers some time, etc. Today, you can do this even on your mobile phone. Yeah? So this technology is really being democratized, and actually it's quite dangerous, yeah? Because it becomes very hard to see what is real and what is fake. And as long as you do it for fun, it's great. Yeah? But we will see later, you can also do it something else with that. Yeah? And then you come really, one of the big issues of this technology is not so much the good use of this and the side effects, but it's really the malicious use of this technology. Yeah? Now, there is a lot of literature already on what kind of bad can you do with this technology. Yeah? And in a large perspective, they divide it in 3 areas. It's digital security. Yeah? So it's all the cyber security. This conference is about cyber. Yeah? We saw this cyber attack on the oil, oil duct in the United States a few months ago. It raised the prices of oil, so big impact. Yeah? Very important to take care of that. Physical security. Imagine that terrorists could hack autonomous cars, yeah? And could come all kinds of danger. And then, of course, the political security, which is the fake news and the government surveillance and even influencing, yeah? in people in democratic processes, which we have seen also, and especially is true for this country. Yeah? So this is really a big issue that we have to do everything we can to avoid this from happening. Of course, this is all illegal. Yeah? Nobody should do it, but still, it's happening a lot. Yeah? But then there are other risks of artificial intelligence, and I have to say of the uses of artificial intelligence, and are the unintended negative consequences. Yeah? And I'm sure you've all seen those things in the press. Yeah? You see here the camera on the left-hand side. It recognizes faces, but there's one face this camera doesn't recognize, and that happens to be a black person. Yeah? Now, this camera is discriminating. It's actually illegal to do that. Yeah? But the builder of this camera, of course, didn't want to discriminate. Yeah? Simply, as machine learning today, deep learning works, it learns from examples. If you want to recognize a face, you show an algorithm 1 million faces, yeah? And you show them another 1 million pictures with no faces, and then it learns to see what is a face. Yeah? It doesn't know that it's a face. It just recognizes pixels. Now, if you majorly feed this system with white people, of course, it recognizes white people. If then suddenly there is a black person, it doesn't recognize because it hasn't been trained. Yeah? So this was an issue. Now, technically we know how to avoid this, but unfortunately it's still happening a lot. Yeah? Explainability. So if you take an important decision, a medical diagnosis, with a complex algorithm that nobody understands from inside, how can you use the conclusion for something, yeah? For something that impacts the person's life? That's very hard. So explainability is very important, but if you want to recommend a video or a song, well, maybe you couldn't care less. Why is this recommending this to me? Because it doesn't have really an impact on people's life. Yeah? So it's a nuanced discussion. And another example, of course, is Google Translate. Yeah? So if you translate, she is a doctor and he is a nurse, you translate to a language that doesn't know gender as such, like Turkish, and then you translate it back to English, you get, he is a doctor, she is a nurse. It's the typical, yeah? The biased professions, yeah, of men and women. Now, Google actually was pointed to this a few years ago, and well, they were really surprised that it had happened, yeah, because of course they don't want this to happen, but it happened. And again, why does it happen? Because Google Translate learns from the millions of translations made on the internet. And of course, if you look at the internet, there are more male doctors than female doctors, and that's what it learns. Yeah? So there's no intention, but still, it happens if you don't take care. Yeah? Of course, Google now has corrected that. If you now put into nurse, it says in Spanish, it gives the female and the male version. Yeah? If you put in nanny, the same thing. But it is still a kind of patch. It hasn't been solved as such. And so there are many unintended negative consequences that needs to be taken care of. And then there are these big problems that nobody knows. Yeah? So just a few of them here. Liability. If you have autonomous self-learning systems, they make an error. Whose fault is it? Yeah? The future of work. We will all be out of work because of automation, not only of physical, but also about intellectual work. And then what does it have to mean for the purpose of life? I mean, many of us live for our work because we can maintain our families. What happens to that? Fake news, we saw it. Killer robots. Yeah? Concentration of data in very few big players and the consequential wealth that they create. A lot of wealth for very few people, which threatens the social equality in the world. So all those are big problems that actually everybody knows there are big problems, but few people are actually working on this. Now if you put all those risks in a framework, so you have the bad things that you have to avoid, you have the very good things that you want to promote, and then in between you have the unknown implications that we saw and the non-desired consequences, even though they are unintended. So it's bias, unfair discrimination, etc. Now, who should act where? Yeah? So that's a difficult point of perspective. And if you look at it now, the more you go to the left, for the good things, it's more individual organizations that work on them. The more you go to the complex things, it's actually governments that have to take the lead and how to solve those problems. How do we solve the future of work if there is a problem? So there's really difficult problems that currently are being discussed, but they're not being put into policies at the moment. Now, I'm going to focus a bit on this part now. What can you do as an individual organization if you want to make a good use of AI to promote your business, but avoid the negative consequences that we've seen many times published in the press. So this is how do you do this journey in a safe way. And actually it connects very well with the previous presentation where you had, it's about scaling, about scaling this AI into production. If you take a perspective a bit farther away, there are a few things that are very important for especially large organizations who want to start with AI and big data and want to do this data journey and then become a data-driven company or that creates value from AI. Actually, I wrote a book on this, which has been published in last July, which classifies this into 5 different areas. First, all kinds of decisions related to organization. Where do you put your AI organization? Is it in strategy? Is it in IT? Is it in marketing? What about data maturity? The business part. How do you select your use cases? How do you measure economic impact? How do you fund this? Is this by the business that is funding it? Or is it headquarters who's funding this? Technology, we've heard this today. Cloud, on-premise, global models, local models, all kinds of decisions that you have to take. And the people dimension, because in the end it's people who do it. We've seen that in the hybrid workers. And then finally, responsibility. So what do you have to do to leverage all this data for business opportunities, but avoid the negative parts? I will go very briefly in this last part of this, the responsible use of AI, also called AI ethics, where there are many players that have started to work on that in the, let's say, the European Commission. Several requirements for ethical AI to be trustworthy, human agency and oversight, transparency. Well, you can look at it. Telefonica came up with its principles a few years ago. It should be fair, it should be transparent and explainable when needed, human-centric, with privacy and security, and also with third parties. Many, it's a proliferation of those AI principles in the last 3 years. So much that even some people made a study about it, and this is a study by Harvard University. But principles is having one thing. Actually, the important thing is how do you make it happen on the floor, yeah? And then we've come up with something that we apply. We will call it responsible AI by design, like privacy by design, like security by design. You move this into the operation where you have to do a lot of awareness and a lot of training. You have to come up with a questionnaire with the right questions to ask, and you have to provide tools so people can do it. And of course, you need a governance model, yeah? And finally, that is a voluntary initiative, but also there is an upcoming European AI Act that wants to regulate some of the uses of AI, which you can see here. It will still take a few years to come into practice, but people are talking about some use cases that are prohibited, others are high risk and are strictly regulated, and others have limited or low risk. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Richard. We had, again, tons of questions come in, but we're running a little short of time, so I'll just fire a couple at you. One is, will there ever be a worldwide AI regulatory council, in your opinion?
I hope there will be. Yeah? Currently, there's no way of that's going to happen, because basically there is the US, there is China, and there is Europe, all with very different models. Europe is trying to take the lead to do something, but if you do it only in one area, one geography, of course, it doesn't mean so much. Yeah? It should be something like the International Aviation Organization, that if there is an accident with a plane, then of course there is a local investigation, but it's accepted in a global organization, and probably need something as well for AI, but not for any use of AI. Yeah? It's very important that you have to limit it to very strict, dangerous uses of AI.
Well, that's interesting, because obviously you touched on that throughout your presentation. Do you think people focusing on the negative potential of AI means that it won't reach its full positive potential?
It is true that in the press, in the media, let's say, there is more attention to negative things, news, than positive things. Even though there are also many things about opportunities. All the use of this technology for COVID, for all kinds of problems to solve the world climate change, also got a lot of attention. But really, the headlines are negative, yeah? And I think that's a problem. So I think citizens need to be empowered with more knowledge about what is true and what is not true. Yeah? Computers, you will be fired by a computer in a few years, or we will all be without jobs. I think those are statements that really do not help, yeah? And put people in a kind of defensive position, but they need to understand so they can make their own decisions. Yeah? I wrote actually another book on which I call The Myths of Artificial Intelligence, which try to decompose those myths in what is true, what is science, what is not true, what is fiction, and what is opinion, because there's a lot of opinion in this debate.
And the most important question we've had today, where can we buy that book?
Well, the book you saw in the presentation, you can buy today. For the other book, it's currently only in Spanish. So I've read in 2 languages.
Okay, one final time. Thank you, Richard.